Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So in this tutorial we're going to take this guy here and we're going to unwrap him and texture him. So normally you would do that way before this point here where he's walking and moving. So this is a slightly unorthodox methodology. So that's him there, and I want to color him in basically. So how do I do that? Well, normally what you would do is you would go into edit mode and you would draw seams and unwrap the character, and you would hide those seams, underneath, like a fold in the skin or on the inside of the leg, around the base of the foot. Like you would cut the character up into different islands, and then those islands would you'd color them in. This character would be really hard to do that with. So this character has been sculpted. These are all triangles. I can't hold down the Alt key and select a loop. The most I'll get is 2. So marking seams on a character that with this much geometry is really difficult. I mean, it's not impossible, but very time consuming. It might take an hour or two if you wanted to cut out each finger, and yeah. So we're not going to do that. What else could we do? We could go into sculpt mode and we could remesh the character. So give him, I don't know, let's say 0, 1, preserve volume, and hit remesh. And oh, I put 1 second. 0, 1. And we remesh. So this won't be a bad job, or so the character has a lot. You can see it's pixelated. I could reduce that number further and get better detail, but you can see here he's got 600,000 verts. So and while they are quads, and I can go in and select them, and have loops, etc. It's not worth the price. So we're not going to do it that way. So I'm just going to undo some of this and get myself back to my starting point. There we go. And we go to object mode. So we're on 90,000 verts and we can't use those techniques. So what are we going to do? We're just going to unwrap them using the built-in tools. So I'm going to use Smart UV Project. And actually before I do that, I'll just go into the UV image editor so you can see what's happening. Now this will take a little bit of time because there are 90,000 verts. So when I do this, Blender is basically going to work out where the seams are. So the advantage to this is that I don't have to mark the seams and spend that time. The disadvantage is I have no control over where those seams will be added. Now I can kind of tweak it a bit. I can change this angle, and that will move where the seams are. So for example, so at the moment it's 66 degrees, but it is a limited amount of control. You can't tell it to hide the seams. Now there are other ways to do it, but this is what we've got. So it's not a bad job at all. However, I'm sure we'll find as we try and paint this that we'll be painting an area here, and there'll be a small gap in it where there's a hole, for example, in the unwrap, and that will that'll be quite problematic and can be difficult to fix, but we will do our best. So we have now a character that is unwrapped. It only has the default kind of Blender material in it, so we're going to go into shading here for a second, and I don't like how it does shading that way. I prefer my shading this way. But this is just personal preference. Okay, so so here's my character, and he's got the generic material. So what we're going to do here in the UV image editor is we're going to go new. So we're going to make a new image, and we'll make it white, and then we need to give it a size. So the size of the image will largely be determined by how much quality you want, and also what device you're going to use this character on. So if it's just for an animation, knock yourself out. If it's for a mobile phone, certain types of phones won't load anything bigger than 4K or 2K if it's an old phone. So you may be kind of restricted in what you can and can't use. So I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna make a 2K image. So 2048 2048, and we'll call this troll skin, and we'll hit OK. And now we have a white image that is the troll skin. So when I go to shading here, I'm going to add that in. I'm going to go add a texture. That is an image texture. That is my troll skin. And if I connect this here, so let's just go to our mode here. So if I disconnect this, he changes back to what's generic here, and then I connect it, and we're this white image. I need it disconnected because I want to draw onto this, and if I draw onto it with it connected, I get sort of like a feedback loop. So I'm drawing onto something that I'm drawing onto, so it's like infinite regress. So yeah, we'll try not to do that. So now I'm going to go to texture paint, and we're going to do some texture painting. Now so when I draw here, so let's just do some basic sort of tools. If I draw across the character, I should be able to draw over here. So now I'm drawing white on white, so let's just pick a random color and draw across the character. And you can see here sort of the methodology of it. So these parts of the character are here. Now they've been unwrapped in various ways, so the arm's going to be in a different place to the torso, etc. But I can draw directly on it, so I'm going to undo that. So that's basically the technique. We're just going to draw onto the character. But one of the nice things we can do is we can add in textures. So I'll show you here, downloaded a few textures. So I've used this website here, so 3dtextures.me. And there's lots and lots of textures here that you can look at, and they are free. You can always look at the licensing if you are interested. Yeah, they're popping up there now. I don't know what was delaying that, but anyway. So I'm going to use a couple of textures that I've downloaded from that website. So at the moment they're not loaded in, so I have no textures to add. So I'm going to go down here to my brush textures, and I'm going to go new, and I'm going to call this, I don't know, dirt map, and I'm going to go open, and where am I going? I am opening this folder here, and I have various ones I've downloaded. So we have this here, ground dirt, so I'm going to pick that one. Though this texture is not designed to be a skin texture, but that doesn't mean we can't use it. So he's a troll, he's a fantasy character, we can color him in any way we want. So I'm going to add a new texture, and I'm going to call this lumps. And this one will have, let's open this here. We'll go up one, and up one again, and we'll go to pebbles. And we'll add basic pebbles in, and then we will add another one. We'll call this, in a very original way, we'll call this lumps 2, and again we'll where are we going to go? Textures, sorry, in the wrong place. And ground dirt, nope, we've used that one. Dried soil, so this one here, and I think that'll look cool. We'll see. And then we'll call this one, I know, skin, and we'll add one more in. I'm not sure what this one will be. I have like dragon scales and all sorts of stuff downloaded. We've done pebble leather, we'll do that one, so that one there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give them a basic sort of, so we'll use this leather here as a basic sort of um, set of kind of tools that we're going to use, our basic color, and then we'll see where we go after that. So I'm going to press F here, and I can make my brush bigger and smaller. Now I'm going to go back up to my tools, and then you can see that this is now selected here. So I'm on texture draw, and I'm not seeing my texture. I need to go into my look dev mode. Now I can go into rendered mode if I want, but there's no need to do that. And so I've just drawn onto the character, and you can see here, there's the character. Now I have not seen that here. Where is that? What wonderful things are going on here. Okay, well let's just proceed for a second. I think I'm in the right, there we go. So, don't know what was going on there. So I'm going to draw on him. Now he's quite shiny, but that's because, you know, we haven't set this guy up properly yet. And I'm going to use this as my kind of base sort of color. So I want to cover him entirely with this texture. Now what I can do, which is, and this is kind of the interesting part of texture painting in Blender, is the resolution of this is determined by how far away I am. So as I get closer, I can get probably a better image, or if there was a pattern to it, I could scale the image by getting closer and further. So as I draw here in 3D, you can see my computer is struggling. Now it's not the fastest computer in the world, but I have like 32 gig of RAM, and it's not a slouch either. I find for something like this, for the base color, we can start using some of the more interesting tools. So I've just colored them in there, trying to use the paint bucket, the fill tool, as you would in, you know, a very basic program. But also what I can do in terms of painting is I can paint over here. So and I find that like for something like a base color, it's far more effective. And also when you're painting in the 3D view, it's quite easy to miss a bit, like a fold in the skin or something. You're constantly turning the model. Now we'll have to do that anyway to when we start adding more color and detail in. But just this is a particularly handy way to do it for a starting layer, shall we say. Okay, now this is not, we're not in Photoshop, so there are things you may want to do that we cannot do. Now, colouring in between the islands is completely pointless, but I have done it nevertheless. So you can see that was quite quick, and if I've been trying to do that over here, it would have taken me longer. So that's my base, my character's base, kind of leathery skin. And we'll worry about making normal maps and stuff of these in a bit. So that's my base color. So I'm going to try and change this up a little bit. So I'm going to take these lumps here. Now if I draw directly onto the character with the current settings, I'll basically replace what's there. And I don't want to do that. So I want it to be a bit more interesting and subtle and etc. And it will refresh any moment now. Here we go. So that's not what I want. So I'm going to undo that. So first of all, I'm going to reduce the strength hugely, and I'm also going to reduce the size of the brush. And when I press F here, I should see actually a preview of the texture, like sort of almost like a but I don't know why I can't see that here. So I should see a preview of this. Now I get to I have lots of tools here at my disposal as well. So I can have symmetry. So I'm going to turn on x-axis symmetry because this character is symmetrical on x. And I'm going to see what I can add in here in terms of some detail into the character. So I'm just going to draw kind of gently and subtly onto the character here, so you can see that's being added in. Now the X mirror axis is not is genuinely an X mirror axis. So because the character is posed and not in his original position, that's no good to me. So I'm going to undo that and turn that off, and I'm just going to go in and do it by hand. And having it asymmetrical will be better anyway. So I'm going to pause the recording because there's no need for you to watch me do the whole thing, and I'll drop in and out as I add new textures, etc. So here you can see, and I was playing around, so I've just attached this to the principal shader so we can have a quick look at it rendered, and I've added that kind of texture just at the base of the feet and around the back here. I've got a little bit, I didn't intend to put that there, I don't know, that's a leak, and then we can see it's primarily around the shoulders. I put some on the face, but I'll get rid of that, it's just plain. And then we've got the pattern here in the neck. Now I'm going to disconnect it so that we can go back to our texture paint and keep working on it here. So let's go back to our tools and let's change to our dirt map. And this is going to be the main one that we're going to use to build on top of this kind of brown kind of color. So this is going to be our kind of major top layer. So again, my brush strength is down, it's quite low, and I'm going to try and almost leave this sort of brown that we put in as sort of the what's in between sort of the main areas. Now as I do multiple strokes on the brush, and I'm just using my mouse here, we'll get you know, it's set to be pressure sensitive, so 2 strokes will put on twice as much as 1. So and we'll add this in here, try and blend it in. So I'm just going to pause this and keep kind of going using this sort of technique. So we're back here and we've got done some more work, and we've used this texture quite a bit, and we're trying to get the different areas to sort of join up, so where sort of one texture meets another. So what we're going to have a quick look at now, there's a few interesting choices to make next, particularly with regard to the face. So I'm just going to pop out of textured mode for a second, go into object mode, there we are there, and we can, if we go to shading, we can join that back up there, we can go back to modeling, and there we are at the moment. So that's what, now he's very lit, so let's just, yeah, so that's closer to what he looks like. So you know, so that's what we've got at the moment. It's not bad, but you know, it's fairly basic. So I want to do a shadow sort of pass on him, or kind of darken him down in certain kind of joints and areas, and I have another texture to add as well. But before we do that, I just want to go into UV editing and have a look at the character for a second. So I'm just going to go from the side, make sure I'm in wireframe mode, deselect everything, and just go B and select this face. And you can see that it's not in one place, and that's a problem. So part of his face is here, that's half his mouth, and this is the other half of his face. This is a good chunk of it. So I don't really mind what he has at the moment. We have to, so if I go back to shading here for a second, I need to disconnect that. So we have choices to make. So what I would like to do is take that there and press L. So select all of the island and go G and bring it over here. And do the same with this one. Press L and go G and bring it over here. Then I'm going to hit A and select all. And you can see in terms of size, this is actually quite a small amount of real estate on this. So I'm going to move this over to, actually I'll move this one, so I'm going to go L and G, move this over here. I'll rotate it a little bit, and then I'm going to press S and scale it up. It's just so I have more pixels basically to draw on. Because when you're looking at a character, you generally look at their face, and so if the face is pixelated or doesn't look good, then we got problems. Now that's going to completely change how the character is set up. In terms of his face is going to look different now, but that's okay. That's what we're doing. And we're going to go redraw that. So we're going to go into texture paint, and you can see though that the resolution that was on the face is far less pixelated than it was, which is what we wanted. Now this image here, there's a little star here on up here. So if I go File, and I'm going to go Save As, and we'll call this non-player character 1. Very original. So you can see the little star is gone because I've saved the blend file, but this image is not saved. So let's just save this. And again, it's going to ask me for where do you want to save it. So we'll go Desktop and Textures, and we'll call it, Troll Skin is perfect. And well, yeah, we'll just leave these settings as they are. So I'll hit save. So at least this is saved now. If for some reason my machine decides to crash, I can I'll get back to this point. So I'm going to have a look at so what I was mostly focused on there was the body, and I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to do the face last. So I'm back in texture paint mode. I'm going to go back to my tools here, open up textures, and I haven't used this one. Now I'm going to be careful with this one because it's quite identifiable as sort of pebbles. So I'm going to make sure my radius is smaller, but my brush strength is down, and I'm going to try and give him sort of a scaly sort of pattern up here across his shoulders, and same over here. It's almost kind of stamping him here, and I'm going to give him a little bit of that here, and a little bit of it around here, and then around his sort of around the joints, so his knees and his elbows. Sort of area here. Move it a little bit, and same on this side. Again, it's just going to give us a little bit of definition and points of interest. Okay, so that's not too bad. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to not use a texture, and I'm just going to use a color, or I'm just going to color stuff in, make it darker. So this is literally just kind of, I'm going to darken areas. Now obviously the character is going to be lit, so there'll be shadows in certain areas. So I don't need to worry about that too much. This brush is probably a bit too strong. This one I'm going to darken him down and give him a bit more. It's like I'm sculpting abs or something. So I'm going to pause the recording and then continue on to do a little bit more of this. Okay, so we're going to look at so we've done some kind of areas here, made them darker, and we've one or two interesting anomalies, but we'll live with them. So we're going to work on a little bit on the face now, and I'm going to kind of use a similar technique. I'm going to use a base kind of color. So and we'll just brighten this up a bit. And then we're going to try and add more detail into the face. So I'm just going to pause and then come back and show you how I progress with that. Okay, so what we've done is we've just used mostly this one here, and then colored in at different darknesses, and so highlight and low light sort of areas. So we're going to save the image, and we're going to jump back into modeling, and just for a moment we will turn the outliner into the shader, and we'll just connect these guys here, and that's where we have gotten to. So that's what our kind of character looks like just in general. So still lots and lots to do. We can, let's see, we'll go back to our outliner, and we'll get ourselves a timeline, and we'll press play. So this is him walking along, and we will see some kind of texture stretching, and it's going to be far from perfect, but this is just to show you sort of the techniques and the things you can do using just the internal sort of tools in Blender to sort of color in your character, and we can play around with lighting if we don't like what we can see, and yeah, so anyway, so that's what we've got, and we're he's far from perfect, but I'm going to stop texturing him there. I'm going to move on to what I'm really interested in this session is I'm going to put him on in this small environment, and I'm going to light him as he walks, and we'll have a look at how to do that next.